What's up, guys? This is Ashton with Freedom Fitness Equipment here with breaking news in the world of the home gym community. I wanted to break this to you guys. It's been all over the internet. It's got news headlines. This is Adrian Gluck and Gluck's Gym versus Vulcan Strength Training Systems based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've read the lawsuit, I've read the complaint, so you don't have to, and we're gonna go through it today. Let's rip. All right, first things first. From a legal standpoint, I am not a lawyer. Any of the statements I'm about to make are in fact not based in legal fact. They're based on my own research, and they are subjective. They are my opinion. They are not necessarily factual. They are simply my opinion on this lawsuit / complaint by Vulcan Strength. So I'm gonna walk you through this lawsuit, what it actually says. We're gonna go through the documentation. I'll flip it up here on the screen just so you can see what I'm going through, and I'll include a link to the actual complaint at the bottom of this video so that you can follow along if you'd like to see the actual documentation. There's been a lot of speculation online. There's been a lot of people who have seen some of the documentation or making inferences. I want to get down to what it actually says. So first things first, something that I found super interesting about this complaint. First of all, this is a complaint. So this is one-sided. This is Vulcan's opinion on what happened. This is not Adrian's opinion on what happened. This is Vulcan's opinion on what happened. And right out of the gate, it looks like they're trying to go after him personally as well as his business. It's called piercing the corporate veil. So it says, Advanced Fitness Concepts, doing business as Vulcan Strength Training Systems, the plaintiff, versus Adrian Gluck and Gluck's Gym LLC. That's important because if they go after his personal assets, they're stripping that corporate entity out of the lawsuit, and they're going after not only the business that he runs, but also him personally, or so it seems at first blush, looking at this documentation. This is the Western District of North Carolina in Charlotte. That's where Vulcan Strength is located. And this is an injunctive for monetary relief. So they want cold, hard cash. On page 1 of 16, I'm just gonna walk you through. The defendant claims he holds himself out as providing in-depth and honest reviews, but this is where they have a little bit of a issue. He receives compensation from major fitness equipment manufacturers when their reviews generate sales. So what is the main issue that Vulcan doesn't like so much in the review of their equipment? So a little bit of backstory. Adrian reviewed the Talos, which is their all-in-one, Vulcan's all-in-one functional trainer half rack combo, has a bunch of attachments. And in this complaint, Vulcan said, the defendant published a highly negative review, which intentionally made false, misleading, and deceptive statements about the Talos product and made gratuitously disparaging remarks about Vulcan and its products. He produced this incendiary negative review of a small company's product to bolster the defendant's reputation for honesty without endangering their revenue streams from larger manufacturers, resulting in lost sales and profits. Therefore, Vulcan wants to bring this action to a halt and sue for monetary relief. This is on top of page 2. So, what is Vulcan saying? They're basically saying that Gluck's Gym lied. Now, Adrian was not clear and truthful in his statements, and they want his money. So, who are the parties? The plaintiff is a corporation in good standing. The defendant is Gluck and a citizen of the United States. This is all on page 2. The jurisdiction, I believe, is gonna be in North Carolina. And one very, very interesting piece of this is that they refer to what's called the Lanham Act, which is section 43 on page 2 of the Lanham Act. The Lanham Act is something I'm going to talk about a little bit later here, but I don't believe it actually has anything to do with this lawsuit. It more has to do with corporations fighting corporations, lying about each other. And so we'll get to that here in a minute. On page 3 at the top, they said that this monetary value of this lawsuit exceeds the sum of $75,000. Now, they're going to ask for a whole buttload of other stuff from Gluck, but they are starting at a threshold of 75 grand. They're saying it's at least $75,000 in damages for this lawsuit. So on page 3, they're claiming that the defendant, Gluck, knew that their conduct would cause substantial damage to Vulcan in this state, so in North Carolina. it goes into the background about Vulcan on page 3 at the bottom. Veteran owned, 17 years of existence, great reviews. I will point out that if you look at their reviews on Google, they are not well reviewed. I'll just pop up the reviews here. You can see in Google, I think they're at 3.4 or 3.8 stars. They're not well reviewed. They're reviewed on reviews.io. Supposedly it's an independent customer review aggregation site, but not all over the place, contrary to their claim. They claim they have good reviews on reviews.io. They do not have good reviews on Google, for many of the same reasons that the home gym community is complaining about now. Among Vulcan's product is the Talos all-in-one gym. This is at the top of page 4. And they say that other people who have reviewed this have been fine with it. So Garage Gyms said the Talos is an exceptional piece of equipment, checking a ridiculous amount of boxes on just about any garage gym checklist. Now, I question the relevancy of any of this. If you're going through an actual vetted and experienced review system like Gluck has, or even like Jonathan and No Fate has, both of them gave really bad marks to this product when they actually used it. I don't know if Garage Gyms that they're highlighting here actually took the product other than just seeing it on the website. I have no idea. But when they put it in the hands of 2 different reviewers, which I'll get to that here in a second, it kind of failed the test, at least according to those guys. And now they're going after Gluck. Now, the interesting thing about this whole situation is, if you look at the comments of Jonathan or No Fate's review of the product, of this Talos product, so not Gluck now, this is Jonathan at No Fate 247. He has what appears to be the exact same product that Gluck had. The assumption is that Vulcan may have picked this up from Gluck and given it to Jonathan, and he may have reviewed the exact same product in its used state after Gluck did, which is an interesting way to do business and an interesting way to do reviews. So if you're giving the same piece to 2 different people, they're both knocking it, and you're saying, oh, there's this one reviewer that provided a good review, I find that a little spurious at best. Let's go a little bit further. Gluck strives to provide in-depth and honest reviews on well-tested items. He maintains a presence on Patreon. They have agreements with other fitness manufacturers, Rep, Rogue Fitness, Bells of Steel, obviously, but he doesn't mention that here. They are affiliates. Now, this is a really interesting statement. The reason why he brings this up is appropriate and relevant later because he accuses Gluck of actually working for these companies, which we'll get to in a minute. All right, so on page 5, it outlines the background of how they got that started on this relationship. Some years ago, the defendant, Gluck, entered into an affiliate agreement with Vulcan. The defendant agreed, evidently, to avoid slander, misrepresentation, or disparagement of Vulcan product services reputation. I wonder where that documentation is, and I wonder if it's going to be brought up in court. The defendant was not particularly active until about July of 2024 when he began communicating with the Vulcan CEO about the Talos. Gluck persisted in October 2024, January 2025, and May of 2025, and eventually Vulcan shipped the product to them in June of 2025. This had a retail value in excess of $4,000, which means absolutely nothing. Their manufacturing cost is probably going to be half to a third of that, in my opinion. On the bottom of page 5, what's interesting about how this whole thing got started is, among other things, Gluck stated that he was missing some parts. Vulcan advised that new and improved parts were on order. So already something was wrong and would be forwarded as soon as Vulcan received them. So now we're on page 6. Gluck also identified issues he was seeing, including concerns about assembly, but he acknowledged he hadn't been able to fully test them due to missing parts. In response, Vulcan sent full assembly instructions. Why were they not included in the beginning? Were they included in the beginning? Did Gluck just miss them? They sent a 6-step, page-by-page guide, and then he also had a complaint in number 25 here on page 6 about the design being intentionally designed with about 1.5 inches of slack. And in a follow-up telephone call, Gluck said the existing cables were fine and there was no need for Vulcan to send shorter cables. They do offer shorter cables than the standard cables, but that was a complaint that Gluck had in his review. In mid-August, Vulcan learned that these new parts they were talking about were going to be delayed, so the defendant Gluck could either continue to wait for the parts, and the parties could try again later. And Gluck responded by inviting Vulcan to retrieve the product, saying, "I don't have any way of shipping it back, or I'd do that." So Vulcan was offering to, you know, take it from him because they didn't have the additional parts, I guess. And obviously at that point, what is Adrian going to do? It's his livelihood. He has to review this equipment. He has to get some sort of review out here, but he doesn't have a way of shipping it back. And if the parts aren't going to be there for months, he can't just delay his review inevitably forever. Bottom of page 6, despite the above agreement, this is where things get hairy, to put the project on hold. I don't know if there was an agreement or not. Within 10 days, defendant Gluck publicly posted an online video called a 60-second gym tour in which Gluck briefly showed the Talos product and camera and referred to it as a pile of shit. Less than 2 weeks later, he posted on his Patreon. Patreon was obviously only available to members, and shortly thereafter, he posted that the same video on his YouTube channel, which is a publicly available platform. He titled the video, "This is the worst product I've ever reviewed." It then shows Gluck on camera. This is the complaint on top of page 7. Who proceeds to make intentionally false, misleading, and disparaging statements about both the Talos product and Vulcan as a company. So Vulcan is alleging that Gluck intentionally said things that were false, misleading, and disparaging about the company. He said things like, the cables have too much slack. Things like, the grooves of the pulleys are too small for these big, thick cables. That the user can't adjust the cable tension from the pulley. That Vulcan's directions don't say how to install the rear cross member, causing him to install it upside down. And they claim they sent him instructions. My question is, were those instructions included? The lat pull-up bar doesn't fit properly. It's not possible to use band pegs. The low row function is too low. I think in his video, he's actually saying it crushes your feet because the cable retraction is all the way to the foot plate. The Vulcan's allegement here is that the statements were objectively false on page 8. They also throw in some other stuff because there's a bunch of puffery in the video. Gluck says Vulcan's website is the world's worst website. Obviously, it's an exaggeration, but Gluck says the ordering process was the worst experience I've ever had. Vulcan's pulleys demonstrate every single thing you could do wrong. They feel like shit. On page 9, he says there's no way they could have done worse. It is a pretty brutal review. He concludes by saying, if I was one of the people that spent my money on this, I'd be pissed. I would probably be pissed too, but that's a whole nother conversation. These relationships create a dilemma for defendants because defendants' appeal in the marketplace depends on cultivating a reputation for fearless, hard-hitting reviews. So now, Gluck's reputation is on the line, and Vulcan is going after him because they don't think he was being completely truthful. The defendant's solution, this is what Vulcan is saying Gluck is doing, was to fabricate a negative and incendiary review of the product of a small manufacturer, enabling defendants to portray themselves as crusaders. This is just crazy. While protecting the competitive interests of the dominant companies in the industry who generate most of the defendants' revenue. So they're claiming that Gluck is trying to defend Rep Fitness, Rogue, whoever the biggest players are, and trying to crush the little guy. That's what it's saying. This is page 9. My statement is, prove it. He's reviewed a ton of equipment, has had negative things to say about most of it, and has good things to say, and he is fairly well balanced. But if he's trying to hold up all of these big companies, why isn't he just pushing all of the reviews to those companies and that's it? Why is he reviewing anything else, giving it even the time of day? Also, by the way, I believe, this is my opinion, but I believe that Vulcan's affiliate commissions are higher than, say, a Rogue or a Rep Fitness. So why would you shoot yourself in the foot, even in the name of honesty, when you're just trying to prop up the big guys who are obviously giving you more money? No. Gluck falsely asserts he's been the target of legal claims in the past. They're saying that's BS. And the statement is false and misleading. This is where it gets really interesting because of the claim that I said earlier that he is working for these companies. On page 10, they specifically state, this statement is false and misleading. So Gluck says, yes, this video is a bit energized. Sure, it could have been more professional, but I don't work for these companies and I work for the viewers, and I hope you will find this helpful, concise, and fair. Also subscribe because this has been a stressful endeavor. This statement is false and misleading because defendants do in fact work for they put this in quotes, Rogue Fitness, Rep Fitness, and other large manufacturers, in that defendants derive substantial revenue from favorable reviews of the products of those companies. Such a line of bullshit. Like, work for Rep and Rogue Fitness? Are you kidding? The man is trying to make a living and doing a really good job of it, but my goodness, he doesn't work for those companies. He even has his own LLC. Why are you going after his LLC at the beginning here? Unbelievable. So anyway, they're trying to go after him because he supposedly works for these other companies, in that he derives revenue share. Well, then he works for you, Vulcan. Defendants' false and misleading Talos reviews have been widely viewed by the consenting public. They were misled. And this is the thing that's gonna be really hard to prove in court. They're trying to accuse Gluck of intentionally deceiving, knowing and intending that their false and misleading Talos review would cause substantial harm to Vulcan. On page 10, they quote him as saying, I just killed the Vulcan Talos and maybe Vulcan 2. That was the title of the video. Obviously, that was clickbait as a title. It was not intended to take down Vulcan as a company. I'll get to what they should do at the end here, but defendant's false and misleading video constitutes commercial advertising or promotion. So this is where they get into the Lanham Act. Let me explain to you something about the Lanham Act. From my research, the Lanham Act is about other companies disparaging another company with a dishonest take. So if they pay, if a competing company to Vulcan were to pay Gluck to review the Vulcan Talos, and then say, give Vulcan a negative review, this is totally within bounds. But if another company lies about a competitor, that is where the Lanham Act applies, in my opinion. The Lanham Act, this is from, I'm just pulling this up on ChatGPT. The Lanham Act primarily targets commercial actors, businesses or individuals engaged in commercial advertising or promotion. So you're trying to sell something and you lie. You lie about a competitor. The Lanham Act would slap you with a pretty hefty penalty. What is the Lanham Act? What am I talking about? The Lanham Act is a cornerstone of U.S. trademark and branding law. It prevents others from profiting off your brand, misleading consumers, or damaging a reputation through false or confusing use of marks or advertising. Let me ask you a question as a viewer. Is a review a false or confusing use of marks or advertising? It's a review, it's an opinion piece, it's a statement about something. And it's not from a commercial actor, it's not from another business. I don't see how the Lanham Act could apply here. Anyway, bottom of page 11, second claim for relief. The falsehoods tend to impeach Vulcan, its trade or profession. Again, knowingly published false and defamatory statements. They knew their video was false. Vulcan suffered harm or damage as a result. They want a retraction and withdrawal because this is causing irreparable damage to Vulcan, obviously. This is probably causing more damage to Vulcan, this complaint, than anything else, but that's another story. All right, bottom of page 12, unfair and deceptive acts. Top of page 13, the injunctive relief that they're seeking is 75 grand. They want him shut down. Again, they're talking about all sorts of claims for relief and trying to justify it using the law. Bottom of page 13, they have misled the consuming public. They say this is promoting unfair competition. Again, they state the $75,000 in recovery damages. Prayer for relief, this is what they're actually asking for. They want a permanent injunction from further publication or distribution of the defendant's false or misleading video, a retraction on each platform where it was posted, and they want Gluck to compensate Vulcan for undertaking further corrective advertising reasonably calculated to attempt to mitigate the harm engendered by the defendant's conduct. They want money for lawyers' fees, they want money for advertising, they want money for all of this. Any damages that were sustained, this is gonna be a lot more than $75,000 if they have anything to say about it. They want damages proved by trial. And this is page 15, actual damages sustained by deceptive trade practices. Again, this is lawyer speak. This is business legalese. This is not, in my opinion, related to a review. And recover of defendants its damages sustained by reason of defendants' acts of common law, unfair competition. Gluck is not selling something aside from t-shirts. He's not selling the Talos. I don't understand why this would even be relevant. I would assume the court would throw out a lot of these complaints. Reasonable attorney's fees is what they're asking for prosecution, cost of this action, trial by jury, and they're asking for further relief from the court as seems just and proper. So that is the lawsuit, all 16 pages of it. and this is what's called a complaint, which is, I don't believe technically the lawsuit yet, but it is gearing up for the lawsuit. So, what is my opinion on all this? As you can see, I'm not a super fan of what Vulcan is doing. I am not a fan of anybody making false statements, though. My opinion on this is that Gluck does a very thorough job of reviewing equipment. He's pretty harsh when he wants to be, and he's fair, but companies need to suck it up. If we were to produce something that he found to be trash, I wouldn't want him to lie and say it was fine. I have told him when he was reviewing our flooring, don't pull any punches, please. I want a fair review of the product. If we need to improve it, we will. Why is Vulcan not doing the same? Why is Vulcan taking their product, which obviously has flaws, to whatever degree they might be, and making a Gluck 2.0 version of the Talos and collaborating with him to make it better, not crush your feet with that lap bar, not or with the row bar, improving the slack in the cables with him, generating a 2.0 design with his help that is better. I don't understand this immediate run into a lawsuit after something that you really don't like. It doesn't make any sense. You're a high-profile company that is now getting their product reviewed in the home gym space. You've been reviewed before. This is going to scare away other reviewers. Not only that, but guess what, Vulcan? By doing this, you're now setting a precedent for every gym equipment reviewer in the space. If you win, if Vulcan wins, every gym equipment reviewer in the space is going to be threatened. You know why? Because every gym equipment reviewer in the space won't be able to be honest or at least state their opinion on something. If they have a different opinion than somebody else, but it's an opinion, then they should be able to have it and not get shut down by somebody who doesn't like it. A manufacturer that doesn't like it that has millions of dollars compared to the nothing that they're starting out with. They're not a manufacturer. They don't have zillions to throw at this. What are you doing? You're fighting the home gym. Now, nobody else is gonna wanna review your product. Other gym equipment reviewers are not gonna review your product. And they're likely, if you win, not going to wanna review high-profile companies that have millions of dollars to throw at them in lawsuits. It's going to shut down the gym equipment review space, and it's going to turn away the home gym community from anything that you sell. Anything that you sell. You risk all sorts of things, review bombing and further reduction in profitability, bankruptcy possibly. Like, this has the ability to sink a company because you are going after the wrong thing. You are not improving the product, you are attacking a person. And that, I think, is so wrong. So anyway, that's the story of the lawsuit. That's my opinion on it. Again, this is just an opinion. It's not based in any legal fact. I am not a lawyer, but I wanted you guys to walk through with me what this actually was. So I read it, you don't have to. You can find it in the bottom of this YouTube video. Adrian and Gluck's Gym, I really hope you guys do well. Vulcan, please do better.